Chatters. I'm Nat.
And I'm Kat, and welcome to the Crime Chat. I am your forensic femme fatale, and Natalie is your true crime addict connoisseur.
We're just two girls who obsess about dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown, and haven't stopped since last week.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we haven't stopped.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Won't stop.
We are recording both part 1 and part 2 in the same day.
Yeah, and you travel. I mean, you've been traveling, girl. You went from Alaska to now you're in Florida.
I'm somewhere with palm trees in my video background. I'm playing with all the virtual backgrounds, okay. So here's your disclaimer, chatters. The following crime chat contains adult content and descriptions of potentially violent scenarios. Your listener discretion is advised.
Yes, and today is part 2 of Kat's story, Lee Harvey Oswald. And I can't.
Yes. We're going to go ahead and just dive right in.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So last week we talked about a lot of the history leading up to Lee Harvey Oswald, his favoritism towards communism. And we're going to continue kind of on that same theme. He married a Soviet citizen. They have a daughter and another one on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he did an assassination attempt on General Walker, who is an anti-communist, white supremacist, forced to retire U.S. Army general. Basically, his beliefs, he was very outspoken. His beliefs did not align with the, kind of the government line, essentially, if you will. So he was forced to retire. And that's where we left off last time, was the Lee Harvey Oswald's assassination attempt on General Walker.
Yes, a lot of background. So if you haven't heard that one yet, I would stop this one and go straight to that one first, because there's a lot of background on who Lee Harvey Oswald was. I did not know all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And I'm obviously still kind of nasally and fighting a flu. I've got some tea I made. And I'm going to be sipping on some tea as we get into this. All right. So we ended in 19... We ended... let me open it back up real quick. Open.
It says later in April.
Yeah, I just want to pick it back up where we were, because it's... The story... Okay, so we ended last week in March 1962. That's when, in April, actually, 1962. That's when the assassination attempt was on General Walker. So later in April of 1963, Marina's friend Ruth was somebody studying Russian in America, became very close with Marina, LHO's wife. And Marina's friend Ruth was visiting Marina and was surprised to see Lee Harvey Oswald, I also refer to him as LHO, packing his bags. He told her he was unable to find work in Dallas and decided to move back to Nolens, which is where he was born. He had family still there. He was able to stay with an aunt, and while in New Orleans, he called all of the Oswalds in the phone book. Remember the phone book? Yeah. And payphones?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. He found the widow of his father's brother, so his uncle's widow, who gave him a picture of his father, Robert Sr., and told LHO that as far as she knew, the rest of the family was dead. So he had no other relatives or anything like that. Okay. On April 26, 1963, LHO began his search for employment in the New Orleans area. He went to the employment office in the Louisiana Department of Labor and stated he was qualified as a commercial photographer, shipping clerk, and a darkroom man. Remember when actual pictures, when they put him in the dark room and put him in the water? None of this digital stuff yet. The interviewer noted on Oswald's application card, quote, "Will travel on limited basis, will relocate, minimum $1.25 an hour, neat, suit, tie, polite," end quote. LHO wrote to Marina while he was in New Orleans, and she was back in Texas staying with Ruth. "All is well. I'm living with Aunt Lillian. She has very kindly taken us in, and I'm now looking for work. When I find it, I will write you." And on May 3rd, he wrote to Marina and Ruth Payne, Marina's friend Ruth, "Girls, I have not found work, but I received money from the unemployment office in the amount of $15 to $20. They were mistaken in the Dallas office when they refused, but I straightened everything out. Uncle Diaz offered me a loan of $200 if needed. Great, huh? End quote. And on May 9th, responding to a newspaper advertisement, LHO completed an application for employment with the William B. Riley Company, Incorporated, an enterprise engaged in the roasting, grinding, canning, bagging, and sale of coffee. In late May and early June, Oswald had apparently begun to formulate plans creating a New Orleans branch of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And again, he's very sympathetic to Communist Party. Using the name Lee Osborne, he ordered a number of printed circulars demanding, quote-unquote, hands off Cuba in large letters, and application forms and membership cards for the proposed chapter. During the same period, LHO began to reconsider returning to the Soviet Union or moving to Cuba. On June 24th, he applied for a new passport, which he received the following day. I don't know how back then you could get a passport like that.
Oh.
Like, you know, it takes like 3 months to get a passport now.
I got mine in a week.
Oh, wow, you did?
Yeah.
But now, had it expired?
10 years. No, I mean, when I first got it, when I was 20 something, I got it and it was like a week.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was quick back before pre 9/11. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. At LHO's request, Marina wrote to the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C., expressing a desire to return to Russia and indicating that she would be accompanied by her husband, Lee Harvey Oswald. She explained that she wanted to return because of family problems, including the impending birth of her second child. Accompanying her letter was a letter written by LHO dated July 1st, in which he asked the embassy to rush an entrance visa for his wife and requested that his visa be considered separately. Marina believed that LHO was really planning to go only to Cuba. She testified that, quote, his basic desire was to get to Cuba by any means and that all the rest of it was window dressing for that purpose, end quote.
Oh.
On July 6th, LHO's cousin, Eugene Murrett, who was studying to be a Jesuit priest in Mobile, Alabama, wrote and asked Oswald if he would come to Mobile and speak at the Jesuit House of Studies about, quote, contemporary Russia and the practice of communism there, end quote. On July 19th, Oswald was let go by the coffee company because of insufficiency and inattention to his work. He spent many of his work hours next door at the Crescent City Garage, where he read gun magazines and discussed guns with one of the owners, Adrian Alba. On July 22nd, Oswald again visited the Louisiana Employment Office to seek new employment and file a claim for unemployment compensation. Thereafter, he collected unemployment compensation weekly and, although apparently making some effort to obtain another job, again listed a number of fictitious job applications on his employment compensation claim form. So basically, he lied saying, I applied for these many jobs and I haven't been hired, so he continued to get unemployment.
Oh.
He soon gave up his search for employment and began to spend his days at home reading. He received another setback on July 25th when he was notified that in response to the request for review, which was made in 1962, his undesirable discharge from the Marine Corps had been upheld. So he was requesting to have it changed. And they said, nope. Now, Oswald did end up accepting his cousin's invitation to go to Mobile, Alabama, and speak at the Jesuit House of Studies. And on July 27th, he and his family, joined by some of the Murretts, some of his other distant cousin families, and they traveled to Mobile, and the Murretts paid for all the expenses. LHO spoke concerning his observations in Russia and conducted a question and answer period. He impressed his listeners as being articulate, which is interesting. He indicated that he had become disillusioned during his stay in Russia and that it is in his opinion, the best political system would be one combining the best points of capitalism and the best points of communism. He also left his listeners with the impression that he was an atheist, since he avoided direct discussion of religion. The group, including the Oswalds and the Murretts, returned to New Orleans on July 28th. The next week, August 5th, LHO visited a store managed by Carlos Bringuiar, a Cuban refugee and avid opponent of Castro and the New Orleans delegate of the Cuban Student Directorate. LHO indicated an interest in joining the struggle against Castro, and he told Bringuiar that he had been a Marine and was trained in guerrilla warfare, and he was willing to not only train Cubans to fight Castro, but also joined the fight himself, which is interesting because he was pro-communism. Well,
Right.
Sort of, like I said, somewhere kind of in the middle. A couple days later, on August 9th, Bringuer saw LHO passing out the Fair Play for Cuba leaflets that he